is that darn Cardi Jew? They're making us ravenous look horrible.
If you've enjoyed this program, please click like and subscribe.
Shalom and welcome again to another exciting edition of Torah Watchman Show International. Brought to you exclusively by your favorite Cardi Jew here, Hakam Yair ben-Emmett. Yes, from Kent Mill, Maryland, United States of America. Quick announcement here before I get to the lecture, the Parshah lecture. I'm running for a member Knesset seat as soon as it's quickly possible. I have to move my family, apply for the Aliyah package as a Jewish family, Jewish Mispoka, move my whole family to Ashdod, Israel, get settled there, get settled for about 6 months, get to know everyone in the country, start doing town hall meetings and things like this like we do in the United States. I got a YouTube video with my business plan and my political action plan put together. Please go to YouTube for more details. I hope you've done well this week. God bless you. We're getting ready to celebrate Shavuot, which is an ancient pilgrimage festival of weeks. Yes, the Parsha for this leap year in the time of Shavuot is Parshah Naso. Okay, what does Naso mean? Counting. Yes, I told you before when we started in the book of Bamidbar, it's all about census, all about accountability, all about counting. Primarily in this last Parsha, and this one, about wrapping up the census, the official census of 12 tribes of Israel. We're going to be completing the census for the Levitical tribes, namely the Gershonites. Gershom, of course, is a son of Moshe. The word Naso comes in Hebrew from the book of Numbers, chapter 4, 22. The entire Parsha is chapter 4, verse 21 through chapter 7, 89. A rather long Parsha, but I will not be long-winded, I promise. I have a synopsis here that I've adopted for this lecture's time that's allocated on YouTube. Okay? A general overview. In this week's reading, Naso, as I said before, is the longest single portion in the Torah, believe it or not. Other people greater than me said that. I analyzed it and read it, and the different Aliyah portions are quite large, many, many verses. Containing 176 verses. Must be pretty important, the information here, and it is. It covers a sub-portion of the 613 mitzvot, and it deals with human-to-human interactions, reactions, and things of this nature. We get to that in a moment. This reading starts with a continuation of the Levite census and discussion regarding tabernacle duties. For instance, what happens when you have to tear down the temple and then transport it to a new site led by the Lord our God's Shekinah glory before them, and how do you take it apart? How do you compartmentalize it? How do you load all that cargo on oxen and donkey carts and things of this nature without corrupting it? Well, it's a very precise thing, and people actually have to be anointed, namely the Levitical tribe has to be touched by God in a certain way to even touch these artifacts and temple implements, okay? We're also talking about the laws of the sotah woman, the wayward woman, and the Nazirite vow. Nazirite vow, for me, is very precious because of Haftarah. We're going to talk about that at the end of this Parsha. It always gives me tears, and I'll explain to you later, okay? This portion concludes with a priestly blessing, the Barakah from the Kohen priest, which the tribal leaders brought in honor of the Tabernacle's inauguration. So typically, I told you before, the Tabernacle, the Mishkan, has already formally been ordained by God, accepted by God, during the same time frame that the first two sons of Aaron perished. They died in a very unfortunate accident. This is when everything was inaugurated. However, every time the temple is torn down, moved, and reassembled, it has to be approved not only by the Levitical priests and Moshe and Aaron, but more importantly by God. He has to accept it before he allows the privilege and honor of his neshama to come from Shamaim and be that host right above the Ark of the Covenant between the two cherubim wings and the Holy Holies in the Mishkan. That a lot of things have to be perfect because God, in order for God to be from the supernal, from the supernatural, to be quantum tangled with the carnal and the things of the flesh and the ground and earth and clay, it has to be precise. So it actually goes through another inauguration ceremony. And then it gives an opportunity for the chieftain to bring offerings, sacrificial offerings, and other tributes as a form of peace and thanksgiving. Okay? In our first aliyah, Jehovah informs Moshe of the tabernacle duties of the Levite and Gershom and Merari when the Jewish people journeyed. Okay? The Gershom family transported the tabernacle tapestries, veils, and coverings, while the Merari family carried its structural components. Okay? So you had the division and segmentation between duties and responsibilities for the sons of Moshe. Okay? They were not part of the Kohanim or the high priest, but they did very, very critical duties that God entrusted them to even touch these things I was discussing, as far as reassembling it against some sort of blueprint. Would you forget when you take everything apart and try to put it back together in God's timing? It had to be precise. And imagery is everything, and devil's in the details, right? So that's what I was thinking. The final count is given the Levite Kohat family, those between ages of 30 and 50, as per God's command, mentioned toward the end of last week's reading, and the tally is 2,750. As I told you, it was a little bit short when you count the Levites, pure tribal Levites, as far as the number of the required manpower to sustain the tabernacle in Mishkan. Okay, this is where the firstborn sons of the other tribes of Israel will be considered to help the priesthood. Okay? Second aliyah, the total for the Gershom family comes right up to 2,630. Okay? The Merari family is 3,200. Okay? Thus, the grand total of Levites eligible to transport the tabernacle, and its vessels was 8,580. It required a small army to do this, okay, essentially. Of course, the Levites were not allowed to fight in wars. They weren't allowed to hold a sharp blade, anything to get involved in blood, and which normally a combat soldier gets involved in, that kind of thing. They were not allowed to do that. They were focused solely on the inner operations of the Tabernacle Mishkan because that was critical. It was the central nexus, the central soul of the nation of Israel, tribe of Israel, 3,500 years ago, in the desert, in the area of Mount Sinai. Okay? Third aliyah, now that God's presence graces the tabernacle, Elohim instructs the Jewish people to banish certain ritually impure individuals from their encampments. What are we talking about? Well, you got traders, you have other people that are not Jewish, people from foreign lands that come there, providing acacia wood, selling frankincense and myrrh and other spices, things of this nature. Most of them were only barred from entering the tabernacle area and immediate environment where the holiness and the ascension of the human spirit and soul was critical in that radius of that area. Okay, only one who suffered from Nazir leprosy was sent out in the general encampment. So if Jews had had a sore, a blister, or something like leprosy on their bodies, dealing with mildew in their homes and all this, they were not allowed to be anywhere near the tabernacle for obvious reasons. This is how ancient Israel 305 years ago implemented social distancing before anyone even thought about COVID. It's amazing. We talked about this before. Okay? This section then discusses the restitution and the temple sacrifice required of one who robs his fellow and then falsely swears to maintain his innocence. You hear what I said. You steal something or you borrow something without the owner's knowledge. You hear about the law of modification, all this. And then falsely swears, I guess in the name of God, that they're innocent, even though God knows they're guilty, and the person whom you robbed knows you're guilty, and there was probably two witnesses. If one robs a convert who then dies without leaving any heirs, sometimes robbery can be very violent and aggressive and not passive, okay? Obviously. Because someone may resist the robbery. The restitution is made to a priest. Also included in the section of the mitzvah to verbally confess one's sins and a person's right to select a priest of his liking to whom to give the various required priestly gifts for restitution, for redemption. You hear that, Christian friends, okay? Everyone is accountable for their own sins. No one who's righteous can atone in any way to take sacrifices that you should bring for your redemption before God, the temple. They're not allowed to do that. It was between the sin is individualistic. It's between you and your creator God, who breathed your nefesh, Yehudi, within you. Okay? Fourth aliyah, the Levite section contains three concepts. So let's break it out for you. Number one, the ceremony for the sotah, a suspected adulteress who was witness going into seclusion with another man. Unfortunately, this happened. Prostitution was rampant during that time, like it is even today in many parts of the world, including the United States. And also, adultery is something that's been normalized in the United States, and traditional nuclear families where you have one man and one woman in a nuclear family, we have problems in marriage abound. When you take God out of the equation, you take prayer out of schools, and all these things, what do you expect? We're going to fall back on peer pressure, the advice of someone more corrupt and corrupted than you to give you bad advice. This can happen, okay? That's what we're talking about. And this is a remedy. Please pay attention. The man makes an accusation. He can be jealous. He can be jealous wrongly or righteously, righteous indignation. Either way, that negativity needs to be contained and controlled. It cannot go on. It can become a form of abuse in that home. And listen, there's nothing more precious than a Jewish family, children, and all those interrelationships to have peace and harmony, especially during Sabbath Kodesh, during Shabbat, okay? The negativity destroys families. Adultery and then accusations of adultery destroys family. And then also the talebearers, the gossipers, those people that go out and tell wild, slanderous things about a family that's having marital issues and problems. The grapevine, every society has it. This is where I'm talking about. Now, what the remedy was that God gave to Moshe is interesting. This section of the Torah is written on a parchment. So the commandment about thou shalt not commit adultery is written in Hebrew, of course, on a small scroll, small parchment, papyrus probably, paper made from plants, rolled in very small, with certain kind of ink, and is dipped in water where the ink emulsifies, in the water. I don't know if I want to drink that, but there's some sort of chemical reaction with that. Okay? The woman is asked to willingly drink this water to testify before not only the Kohen Gadol and not only the temple priest, but everyone who is gathered around as witnesses to this accusation. Say if a woman is not guilty of the accusation and she suffers simply from a very psychologically unstable husband, and some men can get very jealous, and sometimes they can get very angry and violent. I mean, look at O.J. Simpson. Okay, I'm not going there. But what happens is that if a woman, say she's pregnant from another man's child, okay, this happens, and she goes before the temple and she drinks this solution, tries to hide her sin of adultery. She knows what she did wrong. God knows what she did wrong, but still the people do not know the evidence. The punishment for adultery in ancient Israel was the death penalty. And essentially it's what happened. Her abdomen, her uterus, or whatever, they would normally give healthy birth to a new child. Well, she would essentially have a massive hemorrhage within her, miscarriage, and she would die from that. It was pretty horrific. But think about this. How many times would an example or use case like this have to occur for people wake up and see, this is the supernatural, this is a miracle, and I cannot explain it, and I would never want that to happen to my daughter. I'm going to raise her right, and I certainly don't want that to happen in my family. Maybe I need to pay more attention to my wife. Maybe we just need to talk a little bit more, okay? Marriage counseling begins at home. But, to be optimist, I don't think this happened all the time. I think it was quite rare. And unfortunately, some Jewish men had to marry non-Jewish women from their tribe simply to have more children, because their primary wife cannot give birth, and you have concubines, and you have maidservants and other people. Listen, unfortunately, this is what they did. They didn't have what we have today in vitro fertilization. They don't have birth mothers and all this back then either. This is what they had to do. I'm just guessing. The Torah does not go into specifics. I'm not going to quote anything from the Talmud here, but I think this is probably an exception to the rule that a woman would have to die literally from her sins. And here, that Christian, no one, not even a righteous husband, could atone for an unrighteous woman's sins of disobedience. Okay? So, again, if she's unharmed by the water, she drinks it, she doesn't get a stomach ache, she doesn't become ill, the water does not turn into a toxin, she is blessed beyond measure. What the Torah says, she will immediately conceive a child. So if she's been trying to have a child for a number of months or years and has not been able to have a child and been barren, like Rachel was barren, she, as a blessing and a tribute, God would make her pregnant and bless her and bring literally fruit from her womb to bless that Jewish family and clear up all the accusations in that home. Let's be optimistic here. And then there's the laws and individuals who take a solemn vow to be a Nazirite. Most Gentiles, most Christians know what Nazirite is. They think about Samson, the Hercules kind of guy that defeated the Philistines. You grow your hair out, but there's preparations. If you know you're going to have a son, and God promised you have a son, or someone gave you an individual prophecy you'd have a son, and you do have a son, a woman has to invest within herself and her diet and change that. Nothing that's produced from grapes, for instance, the vine itself, the pit, whatever, can be consumed during this time if you want to declare your son to be a Nazirite, okay? This person would abstain from cutting their hair. Your hair could get quite long. You probably have to tie it up a little bit. But the woman has to do this while the fetus is developing in her womb and until the child is born. And then the child is not allowed to drink grape juice, no kohanim. I'm sorry for that kid. I'm sorry about that. But it's a promise that the family makes for the child before they're born. And as a promise, I guess, by age 3, that child has to accept themselves. It's nothing forced on you. but there's an instant and immediate blessing upon that child. That child is ascended as a Levitical priest as long as they keep that Nazirite vow. Okay, and it's an example and a witness before tribal Israel that God is with that person and that God is blessing that family. This person cannot interact with a corpse. Absolutely not. Not even if his own mother passed away, could not go near it. So this person's life would actually be one of a Kohen Gadol as a high priest like Aaron, as far as the 613 mitzvot, the commandments, the blessings, admonishments in that apply only to Levitical priests. Many of those prohibitions apply to a person who accepted the Nazirite vow. Okay? At the conclusion of the term of vow, it can be for 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is, the Nazirite brings certain offerings to the temple and receive a priestly blessing to release that person on that vow. Then they can cut their hair and start drinking Kadam wine. So, fifth Aliyah, on the day when the tabernacle was inaugurated, so everything was assembled and put together, the ascension altar, the four-horn brazen altar was ready to receive bullocks and animals for animal sacrifices. The tribal leaders wished to bring inauguration gifts, so they bring gifts and tributes. Remember, in the maintenance and tear down the Tabernacle Mishkan, parts break, things wear out. So the fittings, the rings, and other things like that had to be made gold-plated, or something had to be refurbished. So this money, these offerings, and things, I would imagine that Moshe and Aaron would take an inventory of what needed to be fixed or repaired. So I imagine a lot of this was about the maintaining the high quality level certification by God, of the tabernacle and Mishkan and all its working parts. Okay, so collectively they brought 6 covered wagons. Just imagine this. And 12 oxen to assist transporting the tabernacle when the Jews travel. In addition, as representative of their respective tribes, everyone, it takes a village to do this. They wish to offer individual gifts and offering God for Thanksgiving. Okay, Jehovah instructed Moshe to accept these gifts, and that on each of the following 12 days that this was going on in the total inauguration, I guess the settlement of the tabernacle and the new earth there and everything else. A lot of things happening supernatural around the tabernacle and Mishkan. There's not specified in Torah, but evidently seeing is believing, but there are other things happening in the supernatural dimension around that tabernacle, the physicality, okay? So 12 days, the leaders would bring individual gifts. Although each leader brought identical gifts, the Torah describes each one individually to show that the same weight and measure of equality, whether the tribe was large or small, wealthy or not so wealthy, they would bring the same package deal of sacrifices and offerings. Okay? The 6th Aliyah, this section continues description of the tribal leaders' gifts. It breaks it out in about 4 or 6 of people that break it out, and I'll share some of the sidras to you on the screen behind me, so you can see what the gift package was. Okay, so the 7th Aliyah, the gifts of the leaders were added up and the totals given. The last verse describes how Jehovah would talk to Moshe, his sweet, tender, and precious voice calling Moshe, Moshe, goes out to the tent of meeting. It goes out to where Moshe's domicile residence was, in his large tent. I imagine his tent was much like Abraham's, how it was open in all 4 directions to everyone. His voice emanating from between the 2 cherubs atop the holy ark. Can you imagine this? This voice could only be heard of Moshe. So when Jehovah wanted to get Moshe's attention, he would wake him from his sleep, wake him from prayer, wake him from his Torah study, whatever's happening, talking to his family members, whatever, he would hear that voice. All the way from where he was located, if he was not in a tabernacle in Mishkan, you didn't have amplification devices there. sometimes you have to yell. You don't know if you had an echo chamber or not, but he heard that voice in his head, in his heart. And if it was an audible sound, I don't know. It was probably like thunder to other people. The point is, this was a very intimate conversation that Jehovah would have with Moshe probably on a daily basis. Now, this is the end of our Parshah Naso. The Haftarah is one of the most precious and beloved Haftarah passages and judges and the books of our Tanakh that has blessed me. Like the books, the Tehillim, the Psalms is always a blessing, you know. But this one touched my heart. Back when I was a rabbinate, I was at a Chabad house, and we had the Haftarahs, and God just filled my mind with imagery. Long story short, I had a beloved daughter, but, you know, my wife and I, because of ages, we didn't have any hope of having other children. So we're thinking about, you know, if we can't have a son together, maybe we can adopt a child. Well, in the United States, because of the limitations of adoption, you both have to be a certain age, and they don't allow you to adopt a baby. You're going to adopt a teenager and everything else. It is what it is. And we've talked to other representatives of the countries to think about. But since we've made a decision, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, decided we're moving to Israel. We're moving to Ashdod. And there are orphanages to be abound in Israel. Their policy is you have to live in Israel to adopt a child for obvious reasons. The last thing a rabbi or hakam or some sort of orphanage, the custody officer, whoever that is with the government, the last thing they want to do is have that Jewish child leave that country. So we prayed for a son by the name of Samson. And that's what this Haftarah is about. Turn with me to the book of Judges, okay? Chapter 13, verses 2 through 25. I'm not going to read all that to you. I'm going to read this one verse here. This is the story of the conception of Samson the Nazirite, okay? Contextually relevant with Parshah Naso, okay? Verse 2 of verse 13. And there was one man from Zorah, and from the family of Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had not borne him a son or any children. The stories abound of women with fertility problems in the Torah, in the Tanakh. It's everywhere. I mean, how long does Sarai had to wait until she's 90 years old to have Yitzhak? And you know the problem with Rachel, she only had 2 children. And when she had Binyamin, she died in childbirth. And it really touches you. For people, you may have friends or family that have multiple miscarriages, tried to adopt, tried to sponsor a child in the home, and things just didn't work out. I mean, a lot can be said. Are you a true Jewish family if you don't have any children together? Fortunately, my wife and I have a beautiful 7-year-old daughter, but that was a massive medical insurance-related event, and it took a great miracle of Jehovah, Elohim, to have that child. I'm not going to go into details of that. I'm just saying there's a lot of barren people today that you probably know. It's a human problem going back to the tribe of Israel. This story is wonderful in that its imagery is great. You have this angel, this Malach, that meets privately with Manoah, his wife, who was barren. And the storyline reminds me a little bit about, the Jesus story, Joseph and Mary and the angel coming to Joseph and all this. Well, in this real story, in the book of Judges, this righteous individual, Manoah, his wife was visited by a righteous man. Now, she presumed that this was someone who was special and different, maybe his countenance. Reminds me of the story when the 3 angels visited Abraham, to warn him about Sodom and Gomorrah and to tell him about the birth announcement of his son. With Sarai laughing in the background because he's been barren all her life. But what's wonderful about the story is that immediately when when the wife of Manoah heard this blessed miracle, she perceived him to be a prophet, a righteous person. She did not know that he was a supernatural being, Moloch, but she at least thought he was a prophet the way he spoke, okay, in a way. And this in a time of judges, a lot was going on in Israel. The Philistines were harassing the 12 tribes of Israel. They didn't have ownership of all the territory that was promised by Moshe and God yet at that time. And the promise that God would send a deliverer to fight for Israel against the Philistines. Okay? And this was Shimshon. But what's so beautiful about this story is the way it was rendered. Again, quickly. So she wanted to offer sacrifices. She was asking this gentleman, what is your name? He said, my name is hidden. I said, I want to give you a tribute for telling me that I'm going to be pregnant. I believe what you're saying. You speak from God. You're a man of God. He said, you don't give sacrifices to me, and it's not important you know my name. You give glory and honor to God. Some people worship angels. There's books and books in Christian bookstores. I'm not picking on Christian, but I'm saying about angels everywhere and underneath every stone. Some people have statues of angels. You go to a Roman Catholic church and you see statues of angels too. Too much emphasis that the angel was just pointing to the God who would do the miracle within this lady's womb and bring forth from that barren womb a beautiful son, powerful son, the name of Shimshon. And then finally, when she told her husband, and her husband saw the light in her face, they offered additional sacrifice. He said, well, we need to do something. Bring this man here. And he showed up. What happened is that when he lit the fire, this man essentially transmuted its essence into the flame and went up into the heavens. And at that time, they knew he was an angel of God. And they fell on their faces. They didn't bend their knees like doing this, like rabbinets, you know. They fell on their faces. We are unclean. God is glorious. He's so his loving kindness at Kasdo Ve'olam is everlasting. And they blessed them both with a supernatural event and herald of a new child from a messenger of the Lord their God. I thought that was a wonderful way to end this lecture. So how did you enjoy this story? How did you enjoy this Parsha? Please provide your feedback to ben-Emmett at gmail.com. That information is on my YouTube channel. Go to YouTube/Word and Void. Word of God is holy and righteous and true. The void is anything that is not the Torah, which is the 50 shades of gray in our political debates called religious denominations. Anyway, had to say that. But anyway, this is Hakam Yar ben-Emmett signing out. Until the next time, remember my motto, share the love and truth, all the wealth of joy and happiness that the Torah has brought you. Share it with other people. Share it with everyone in the world. Remember, the best part of the Torah in your life is when you breathe it in and when you love people through the Torah. God commands you to love your neighbor as yourself, both Jew and Gentile. So when you love someone who feels that they don't expect you to have that smile at them, I'm working on my car. I got grease all on me. I'm an African American. You're a Caucasian. I don't know who you are. I actually passed by a guy here for a hobby on Saturdays and I walked to shul. He works in his car. I ask him how he's doing. I don't have to say anything, but the Torah that's shining, that beautiful light in my heart, it just pushes you to do things out of human element that you would not normally do. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, please share the announcement that I am moving to Israel in 6 years. I had a beautiful Jew from Israel that said, we need more Jews like you in Israel. I had so many people saying, I like your worldview. I like what you're saying. I need you to go to Israel. For me to not to be a hypocrite. And, you know, Shavuot is another of these pilgrimage holidays. And I'm over here in the United States. I'm celebrating Shavuot. I mean, I'd say, what right do I have to do this when I live in the diaspora by choice? That's going to end in about 6 years. My retirement policy is to go to Israel and sleep in a bunker with my brothers and sisters there. When weapons and missiles soaring overhead, I hope it doesn't happen again. But I want to be there with my people. I want to be there and struggle with them. I want to make a life for my family as my daughter grows up and dance at her wedding and marry her in Jerusalem and adopt Shimshon, a little brother for her. That's what I'm praying for. That's what's so close to my heart, so precious to me, to thinking about these things. Well, shalom aleichem. Hakam Yar ben-Emmett signing out until the next time.
Yisai il harim meyayin yavo Azri meim Adonai Osa shamayim v'ha'aretz El yotain l'mal tragleach El yonun shomreach Hine alakdum v'lo yishan Shomer Yisrael